Hey everyone, this is Thomas from TC Hall Leather, and today we're doing a widely requested video. This is beginner leather tools. There will be some things missing from this. If you've done leatherworking for a little while yet, you might ask yourself, oh, where is the this or where is the that? Well, there will be a more advanced leather tools video coming up in the future, but this one is really hitting the basics. Here we really have a mixture of higher quality tools and really lower quality tools, but they all serve a purpose. And what I wanted to do with this video was to show how you could amass a collection to start out that is both affordable and practical, and a set that will last you well into your leather crafting journey, wherever that takes you. I'll have everything in this video linked in the description below, as well as a couple alternatives for a few of them. Not everyone's going to want the same thing. We all have different preferences, and hopefully you'll find something in this video that helps you to make a choice when you're starting out. One tool that's absolutely invaluable for every leather crafter is a scratch awl. This is a scratch awl that I got from Tandy, and it's lasted me for years. Really what a scratch awl is just a pointy thing that lets you mark out patterns or mark where you need to cut. I've also seen people make their own scratch awls out of screwdrivers that they filed down. This next item is really important, and you'll see it on pretty much every leather crafter's desk. It's a cutting mat. They come in all shapes and sizes. Well, I mean, most of them are rectangular, so I guess nix that. A great thing about these cutting mats is that they're demarcated with measurement lines. So even though I measure mostly in metric, and this one's in imperial, it uses inches, I can still use the guidelines to make a perfect edge cut. If you've used any of my patterns before, you'll see that I love trim allowance. The best way to get good trim allowance is by using these guidelines on the mats. So if you get one of these, know that the lines are not just for decoration, they honestly will help you to get straight lines. We're really going on the simplistic end here. These are the cheapest items on the list. I like this metal ruler. It has a cork back, but any non-slip ruler will do just fine. You're going to need a tool or two to cut out your patterns and your leather. I choose to use a couple of different knives for this. One is a common X-Acto knife. You can find these at Walmart. They're not very expensive, and the blades are pretty cheap. They also sharpen relatively well if you've got a strop. You can get away with these for most leather projects. Next, we have this Japanese-style leather knife. This is an Amazon special. This is nothing to write home about, but it will get the job done. These kinds of knives are great for skiving. They're also good for making very clean, straight shortcuts. If you're really adept with these kinds of knives, then you can use them to make long, straight cuts. There are some awesome crafters out there who do a much better job with these than I do, but I do like to use them to skive. Next up is a piece of canvas cloth. This is going to help you to burnish your edges and get a very nice shine on them, but it's also great to have around in case you need to clean up a small mess. Canvas is an awesome material for leather because it's a little absorbent, but it is great for friction if you need to create that friction for your edge burnishing. We'll need some sandpaper. I like to start with either 150 or 220 grit. We'll use the sandpaper to smooth out our edges, especially our corners. An edge beveler. When you're finishing your edges on a leathercraft piece, you want them to be rounded over, not straight. When you cut a piece, it creates a 90-degree angle on the edge. And what happens there, that edge is going to mushroom out. And that's really not something that you want. It's going to decrease the life of the product really quickly and make it look really tacky as well. So what an edge beveler is going to do is take off just the absolute corner of an edge. So instead of a 90-degree angle, you're going to be looking at a rounded edge. These edge bevelers come in tons of shapes and sizes. This one is from Springfield Leather Company. It's a number 1. You can get a lot of different sizes of these as well. The number 1 takes off just enough leather for most of my projects, working anywhere from about 2.5 ounce leather all the way up to a couple of stacks of 3 ounce leather. I do sometimes move up to a Kyoshin Elle, number 1. So the sizing on these is, there we go. The sizing on these is super irregular. The Kyoshin Elle number 1 takes off a lot more material than the Springfield number 1. This one I use for large projects, for belts sometimes, just for bigger stuff with a thicker edge. So until you know exactly what you're looking for as a beginner, I encourage you to buy something like the Springfield or the Kyoshin Elle that is in a really reasonable price range. The most common way to finish a leather edge is by burnishing, although some people paint their edges as well, which is great. I burnish my edges with Tokonole. This is made by Seawood Leather Company, the same people that make my water-based glue. And Tokonole is a water-based solution that allows you to bring all the oils to the surface. And as far as actual burnishing goes, this is a great tool, this wood burnishing rod, and you can find these lots of places as well. If you're really looking to up your speed, you can get an electric burnisher, and I'll go over those in a separate video. You're going to need some kind of glue to hold your project together. I prefer this water-based glue from Siwa. This is a really great choice for glue if you don't want any toxic fumes, or if you don't want to really mess up your workplace. This comes off of a mat really simply with water and a cloth. It also cleans off hands really well, and it dries really quickly too. One downside is that this is not the strongest adhesive. It will come apart if you really tug at it sometimes, but if you apply it on both sides of a project and then fuse those together once you've let them become a bit tacky, you're not going to have any problems with your project coming apart. I like these glue spreaders. The plastic really works well with the Siwa water-based glue. And then when the glue dries on the plastic spreaders, you can just peel it off. The thing that I like most for making straight lines on a piece is called a wing divider. These can be found in a lot of different places. This one's from Craft Tool, from Tandy. I wouldn't recommend skimping on this because a good one will last you a long time. Once you've marked your stitch line, you're going to need some pricking irons or punches. The difference between pricking irons and punches is that pricking irons aren't necessarily designed to go all the way through the leather, merely to make a mark for you to push an awl through. But really, pricking irons and punches, as terminology, are used interchangeably most of the time. So these are Rocky Mountain pricking irons, and I use them like punches. They go all the way through the leather. Rocky Mountain has a good deal on these pricking irons. You can get a 2-tooth and a 9-tooth together and save a little bit of cash. As far as the size and the spacing of pricking irons, my preference for wallets is 3.85 millimeters. That's the space from tooth to tooth, marking the very center of the hole that the tooth makes. The 9-tooth is great for long stretches, where the 2-tooth is good for working around corners, or if you need to make a final punch on a pocket. The pair together is an awesome combination. When you're using pricking irons or punches, you need something to hit them with. Some people like to start out with a hammer to hit their punches, and that is a formula for destruction of all your tools. It could also result in injury. Use something like this poly maul. This is a pretty lightweight maul. It came in an Amazon package a long time ago, and I've just never gotten rid of it. It's only 10 ounces. This is called a punch pad. They're all essentially rubber or plastic or some sort of material that you can punch into and not damage your tools. Or you can even use scrap leather. You could use a hammer as long as it's rubber, wood, rawhide, or poly. But make sure that you find a weight and a size that works best for you and your projects. One of the most overlooked tools, because it's not technically the most important, is what's called a bone folder. These are used pretty often in paper crafts, as my wife can tell you, and they can be made out of plastic or anything, not just bone, although these are made out of bone. But what a bone folder does is it allows you to open up the pockets that you've made or to shove into tight spaces that have been sealed by glue, and to allow the product to be more user-friendly when you ship it out. I use my bone folder to press down edges, to fold them over, as the name would imply. It's also great to close up stitching holes before you start sewing. Once you're ready to start sewing, you're going to need some thread. I have a couple of different threads here. One is from Ritza, it's tiger thread. This is the 0.6mm white. I got it from Buckle Guy, but you can also get it from Rocky Mountain Leather Supply, among a couple of other websites. Ritza tiger thread is known for its very tight weave. It's also flat, which is unique among polyester threads. Usually they're round, but this will lie fairly flat when you hammer it down. Another unique trait of tiger thread is that it's heavily waxed. You can see here it holds its shape, which is more like wire sometimes than thread, but it's very soft and you can feel the wax. It'll last a really long time because of its thick weave, and I really recommend this for beginners. The downside to tiger thread is that it has a pretty limited range of sizes. While it has lots of color options, it ranges from 0.6mm to 1.2mm. So if you're looking at doing some finer work like watch straps, you really might look at some different thread that goes smaller than this. A secondary option here, if you're still looking at polyester thread, is this Rocky Mountain 0.45mm. They make 0.6mm as well, which is the same width as the tiger thread, except it's round. You can see it's not quite as heavily waxed as the tiger thread, and I really like this Rocky Mountain thread as an alternative to a more expensive linen thread like linen cable. It does a really nice job, and you can burn the ends instead of having to worry about gluing them. If your thread isn't pre-waxed, you'll want to buy some beeswax. This will help you to really glide your thread through the holes, but it will also prevent you from burning your fingers. When you're sewing your projects, my favorite needle to use are John James. These are awesome saddler's harness needles. They have nice, big, open eyes, you can see there, but they're not massive. They're not too large to shove through a project. Especially if you're using a nice wide tooth pricking iron or punch, like the Rocky Mountains that I showed earlier, or especially something like the Cinnabrox pricking irons. I use size 004. It works really well from about 0.45mm thread all the way up to 0.6. If you're working outside of those parameters, I think I would recommend choosing a different size of needle, but 004 John James needles work awesome for me. You're going to need to snip your thread at some point. You can use a pair of thread snips. You can get them at any craft store or Walmart. You don't actually need thread snips to snip thread. A pair of scissors will do just fine. There are a couple of really good ways to finish off the ends of polyester thread. One is a simple lighter. The other is a tool called a thread zap, which I'm using here. It burns off the thread really efficiently, and you don't have to worry about marring your leather with the flame. One thing to watch out with in leather work is not to get duped by all of the branding. Tools for leather crafters or tools marketed to leather crafters are often just hobbyist tools for sewing or for other crafts that get marked up in price. So watch out, you don't need specialized scissors to cut thread. You just need to cut the thread. I hope that this very short introduction to beginner leather tools has been helpful, so be sure to like and subscribe and visit our website for more. Check out all of our patterns, and we'll see you in the next one.